Ready to move out? My husband, looking at me as if I've outlived my usefulness, confronted me. Treated like an ATM, now he was kicking me out of the house. Why must it always be me who suffers? Vowing revenge, I agreed to leave. But this was part of my plan to retaliate. My name is Nancy, aged 46. I work at the City Hall as a civil servant. After graduating from a community college, I have devoted myself to my job for 25 years. I got married to my husband, Bob, when I was 25. We had a shotgun wedding and had a boy the next year. Our son is now a college student. He moved out to attend a local university. To be honest, our marital relationship is not so good. Our relationship has gotten even colder since our son left. We hardly have any conversation. Worse, Bob's dominance has become unbearable, like when we were newlywed. Seems like he had suppressed his nature when our son was born, but now it's resurfacing. His complaints about the dinner I prepare painstakingly, "It lacks flavor, remake it," are a daily occurrence. No matter how carefully I do the laundry and cleaning, Bob's nagging is endless. "Can't even handle the housework with a community college degree. Why did I even marry such a stupid woman?" After graduating from a prestigious private university, Bob works as a salesperson at a large food trading company. From his perspective, me, a community college graduate and civil servant, must seem incompatible. He often belittles me. I have raised my concerns about sharing housework a few times, saying, "We both work, can't we share the chores?" But his response was always the same: "It's a wife's duty to do housework. You work for the government and finish at regular hours. You should have plenty of time. Our kid is grown up. You can handle it yourself." When I mumbled, "Our child has grown up for you as well," it seemed to infuriate him, and he even said, "If you can't handle it, then you must quit your job." Bob says quit the job easily, but I can't quit because I have a reason. Living expenses, the mortgage, our son's college tuition, almost all of it is paid from my salary. I tried to discuss this several times with him. "Can't you help with at least the mortgage or part of the tuition?" But he always said, "I'll use the money I earned however I like," and paid only the bare minimum. We have separate bank accounts since we got married, and I can't access Bob's account, so I had no choice. It's frightening how you can get used to even this kind of married life over 20 years, but there was something that recently started to bother me. It's that Bob has started asking me for money for various reasons. "There's a family gathering back at my parents' home." "So what's the big deal?" "Well, they're asking for spending some money for the nieces and nephews. I need you to cough up around $100. He replied, and that was the start of it. I recognized the necessity of family obligations, but found it strange why he couldn't pay it by himself. Nevertheless, I had a clear vision of being insulted as a cold woman if I refused to pay, so I complied. But from that day, things took a turn. "My dad got injured and had to be hospitalized," he informed me. "Oh no, we must visit him soon." "No need for a visit, but can you spare around $400 for a get-well gift?" he said. On another day, he also said, "Some distant relative seems to have gotten married." "Distant relative? From your mother's or father's side?" "Stop poking your nose into everything. We need around $300 for a wedding gift, so be prepared." Before I knew it, I was squeezed out of several $1,000s on top of our daily expenses. Trust in Bob was on a shaky ground, and my suspicion towards him only grew. He continued to solicit money from me, but I began to dodge his requests skillfully. This only led to Bob's temper souring and him taking his anger out on me. "Don't you want to contribute anything to your in-laws?" He raged whenever our paths crossed. I wondered why I had to endure all this. Sometimes I was on the brink of tears. Around the same time, I also started noticing Bob coming home late. Some days he'd return with a suspicious smell of perfume, and I even found a woman's earring in his shirt pocket. The word infidelity was looming in my mind. "You're coming home late. Are you busy with work?" "I'm not like you. I have to entertain clients and stuff. Must be nice to have a cushy government job." It felt like he was belittling the work I took pride in. "You just sit in front of a computer all day. Can't even say if that's work." He laughed scornfully. "Don't belittle me." There were times when I raised my voice without thinking. Our arguments became more frequent. I couldn't understand why he had to go this far. Despite me handling most of the expenses every month, I miss the old days. He used to be such a kind man. I can no longer remember what attracted me to my husband, Bob, and why I married him. Then there came that day. My dreadful hunch turned out to be precisely accurate. It was an unusual day when Bob got home early. You're home earlier than usual today. I've got something to discuss. Discuss? I asked, confused. Suddenly, Bob bluntly said, "Get out of this house." Having suspected Bob of cheating for a while, I asked, "You want to be with your mistress?" He responded, "You catch on quick," confirming my worst fears. Women's intuition can be truly terrifying. According to Bob, his mistress was the owner of a bar he frequently used for business meetings. Unlike me, she was supposedly a charming and gentle woman. Plus, she was beautiful. "She understands me truly well. She has a kid, so we're going to live together here." He rambled on about his audacious plans, which I had no interest in hearing. I told Bob, "Give me one night to think," then retreated to our room. Behind my back, he coldly said, "Get out as soon as you can." After treating me like an ATM, now he wanted to kick me out of the house? The money he'd squeezed out of me must have gone to his mistress. The late nights at work for business meetings were probably lies. He might have been meeting his mistress after those meetings. Why do I have to suffer like this? Furious at Bob's lazy and unjust behavior, I decided to take action. The next morning, Bob asked with a snide tone, "Are you ready to move out?" I replied coolly, "I'll leave today." Seeing my refreshing attitude, Bob looked surprised but said happily, "Finally, I can escape this dull life. Having a beautiful woman in the house, even if it's just a place to sleep, is definitely better. I'll take all my stuff with me." "That's what I need. Otherwise, we can't start our new life." Bob, with his smug face, referring to his new life and his mistress. To such a husband, I said, I want a divorce as my condition for leaving the house. I didn't want to end up as a pathetic wife who just accepts her husband's infidelity and leaves. I'm going to divorce this man. I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared for a time like this. Visualizing his future with his mistress and overjoyed, Bob readily signed the divorce papers saying, "That's an easy thing." That afternoon, I packed my belongings and left the house. I feel so refreshed. My husband, Bob, exclaimed loudly enough for me to hear at the doorway. His smug happiness was only temporary, I thought. I submitted the divorce papers at my workplace, explained the situation to my colleagues, and took a few days off. Since everything happened so abruptly, I hadn't been able to secure a new place yet. I decided to crash at my son's place for the time being. Seeing me after a while, he must have noticed my relief. He smiled relieved. "You finally ended it." This is just the beginning. By the way, did you take care of that thing I asked you to do? Absolutely. Did exactly as you said. Thank you. The curtains of my revenge had just been lifted. A week later, I received a call from a familiar number. No mistake, it was Bob. Or should I say, my ex-husband now. At first, I ignored his calls, but the incessant ringing forced me to answer. I took a deep breath before picking up the phone. "What the hell is going on?" He barked from the other end. It was the end of the month, a day when various payments were due. "What are you talking about?" "This month's payments." "What are you talking about? We're divorced. Where is my obligation to pay?" "What did you say?" Yes, it's not surprising he was yelling. This month, neither the living expenses nor the mortgage were paid from my salary, and the amount must have shocked him. Our family home was located in a high-end residential area. The mortgage alone cost several $1,000s. How am I supposed to cover this amount? Your salary was..." Bob's voice sounded incredulous. I decided to explain everything from scratch. We've been living separately under the same roof for a while, so I didn't feel the need to tell you. I've been promoted to director after my work was recognized. Director? Not a manager? Since when? Since our son started high school, I believe. My salary is probably double more than yours. What? Bob seemed flabbergasted with each revelation. Something else I didn't tell you, I've been reinvesting money for our son's education since he was born. I now have a few $100,000 in assets. Thankfully, we kept separate bank accounts since we were married, so you didn't know anything about the money. Impossible. How could? I continued with my explanation. I had planned to divorce him sooner, but it was beneficial to keep him as a handy ATM machine. I managed to get him to agree to the divorce willingly. I pretended to be a docile woman who depended on him for money. I told our son well in advance that we were planning to divorce and suggested he go to a local university. Everything was part of my plan. After I finished speaking, Bob was speechless. How does it feel to be countered by your wife, who you've looked down upon because she only graduated from a community college and worked a cushy government job? He probably never thought I'd be this forthcoming. He was at a loss for words. Isn't it strange that he never questioned how we maintained a middle-class lifestyle and beyond? Of course, since we're divorced, I have no obligation to pay anything that I used to, including this month's payments. Isn't the condo in your name? Shouldn't you be the one to pay the mortgage?
Where are you?
What?
I'll come to get you. Tell me where you are.
Bob managed to utter.
They told me at work that you were taking a few days off, but they don't know where you are. How am I supposed to live now?
He mumbled. That's no surprise, since I've gone into hiding with the help of my workplace and our son. Of course, I also enlisted the help of my parents and relatives. Thanks to that, Bob seems to be at his wit's end. Why don't you work and earn your own money? Of course you won't be able to live as comfortably as before with your debt. I said coldly, and I could tell Bob was taken aback.
How do you know that?
Simple, just hire a private investigator. It's a surefire way. It turns out that my ex-husband Bob was squandering most of his salary on gambling. As a result of his debts, he had been paying them with the money I was providing for our monthly living expenses. Are you insane, Bob, giving money to your mistress on top of everything else? One day, I'll throw your words back at you. Why did I marry such a fool? I retorted mercilessly, leaving Bob breathless and silent again. After a while, Bob suddenly softened his voice.
I admit I was wrong. Can't you come back to me? I was totally wrong. Please tell me your address. I want to apologize in person.
He kept throwing out lies just to keep me on the line. Seemingly, he hadn't learned his lesson yet, so I decided to reveal 2 more truths to Bob. By the way, have you checked your mailbox?
Why are you asking all of a sudden?
Haven't seen it yet, huh? You should have received a bill for alimony. Bob may not realize this, but I never said anything about an amicable divorce. He was the one who committed adultery. Obviously, I have the right to demand alimony from him. But even at this point, Bob insisted,
I've never said I cheated on you.
Having anticipated this, I told him, the bill for your alimony is accompanied by your report of your adultery investigation and evidence photos. Actually, most of the content of this report is thanks to the efforts of our son, not the private investigator. One day when I visited our son John,
Mom, I have this.
What is it, John? What John slowly pulled out was a photograph capturing Bob in the act of cheating.
You didn't divorce because of me, right? I couldn't do anything until now, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it, John.
I wanted to be of some help.
According to John, he had been running around collecting evidence during his spare time from school and work. He made the effort even though he lives quite far away from our home and had to spend his valuable days off. I couldn't waste the evidence that John had worked so hard to gather. Knowing Bob, he'd surely try to wiggle his way out of this, so I had prepared thoroughly. There's one more thing.
What more could there be?
Have we received any notification from our son's university yet?
What kind of notification are you talking about?
About the tuition fee withdrawal.
What?
Yes, the procedure I had asked our son to handle was to change the account for tuition fee withdrawal to be under Bob's name. That's because the tuition fee for this semester is going to be withdrawn soon.
Wait a minute, let's talk this through calmly.
I am perfectly calm. He should feel somewhat relieved that our son didn't enroll in the same prestigious university as Bob did. Our intelligent son, against Bob's objections, studied hard and enrolled in a cheaper, local university in Idaho. But still, even just the first semester tuition fee will cost thousands of dollars. Since the deadline for alimony is approaching, please transfer it sooner.
Please, give me a break.
Why don't you stop making a scene? I won't have anything to do with you anymore. Saying that, I hung up the phone. Later, I heard through the grapevine that after the assistance from me stopped, Bob had to sell the condo where he was living. Now, he is living in a rundown 500 square foot apartment that is so old. Without any source of money, a desperate Bob tried to keep me involved, calling me again and again. I don't know what kind of woman his mistress is, but it seems she's not willing to help him. I heard later that apparently his mistress had even left him alone. I had a private detective track his mistress too. And to my surprise, it turned out that the mistress didn't have any children, Bob was the only one serious about it. It seems he was completely taken for a ride. Having used me like an ATM and kicked me out of the house, I would like him to reflect on his actions thoroughly. Apparently, Bob, unable to manage with his own debt and the alimony he owes me, turned to his parents, but they didn't forgive him for the terrible things he did to me and turned him away. Having been disowned by his parents, Bob now has no one to rely on and is said to be lost. As for me, I have been finally liberated from all the trouble and am living a leisurely life. With the assets gained from investments and the alimony from Bob, I bought a newly built condo. On the weekends, our son comes to visit and we have tea and study together. Surprisingly, it turns out his dream is to become a public servant just like me. He's studying hard, taking my advice for the National Civil Service exam. Seeing this makes me very happy. I returned to my workplace and distributed sweets to my boss and colleagues who had supported me. What I have realized again through this experience is that if you work hard with sincerity, you will definitely be rewarded. I intend to keep this in mind and continue living.